It is 9:30 on Christmas Eve. As I sit down to write this, my young family are huddled around the fire in the drawing room, still telling ghost stories. It is a sport for them, a high-spirited and harmless game among young people. I can hear them now, vying with one another to tell the horridest, most spine-chilling tale. They speak of dripping stone walls in uninhabited castles, of secret dungeons and overgrown graveyards, howlings, shriekings, groanings and scuttlings, hooded monks and headless horsemen. This is sport indeed, an ancient tradition for the festive season, and to be sure, nothing of which I can possibly disapprove. The truth is quite other, and altogether more terrible.
Stepfather? Oh, here you are. We wondered where you were hiding.
I'm not hiding, Isobelle. I'm just enjoying a little peace and quiet. Too much excitement for an old chap like me, I'm afraid.
I wonder you can bear to be alone after Edmund's story. It was the best yet. When those fingers started scratching at the window pane, I thought I should faint.
Yes, your brother certainly has a most vivid imagination.
What are you writing there?
Nothing. A letter. It's of no importance.
Good, because it's your turn.
My turn for what?
To tell a story.
No, I don't think so.
Come on, stepfather, you must. Everyone else has. Even Mother managed one. Well, of sorts.
No, Isobelle, I really would rather not.
Oh, don't be an old spoil sport. It is Christmas Eve.
No. No, I'm sorry, nothing from me.
Isobelle? We're all waiting, come on.
It's stepfather. He's being a bit shy. He won't come.
Oh, I say, sir. Be a sport. We've got all the lights out, and the fire's died right down. Edmund's giving a corking performance of hooting owls and howling wind. Your audience awaits you.
Well, I fear they must wait on, Oliver. I'm quite comfortable in here, by myself.
Well, that's hardly the Christmas spirit, is it?
I'm sorry.
Isobelle, go and fetch Mother. Tell her husband is being most uncooperative.
Isobelle, wait.
Aha! I thought that would do the trick.
Both of you, please. Just leave me. Go back to the drawing room and amuse yourselves. I'm sure Edmund can come up with another tale in place of mine.
But that's not the point. It's a competition. We each tell one and then decide whose was the best. Oh, you must be able to think of one ghost story, surely.
Everybody knows at least one.
Do your stuff, stepfather. Play the game.
Come on, please. You can't let us down.
Enough! I'm sorry to disappoint you all, but I have no story to tell.
Right. Fair enough. We'll,
Come on, it's getting late. I think perhaps it's time for bed.
Yes, right.
Good night, Father.
Good night, sir. Sorry to have interrupted you.
Oh, my dear Isobelle, how right you are. I do have a story, a true story, a story of haunting and evil, fear and confusion, horror and tragedy. But it is not a story to be told around the fireside on Christmas Eve. I have always known, of course, in my heart, that the experience would never leave me, that it was now woven into my very fibres. And now tonight, it again fills my mind to the exclusion of all else. It seems the high spirits of my dear stepchildren have forced me to renew my acquaintance with that mortal dread and terror of spirit I had hoped forever dead. And I know I shall have no rest from it, shall lie awake in a chill of sweat, until I've gone back to that other world and relived the horrors of that time, that place.
Arthur?
Oh, Esme, dearest.
Arthur, what is it? What's wrong? Are you unwell? The children were quite upset. They said they'd never seen you so angry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll apologise to them in the morning.
It's so unlike you, Arthur.
Yes, I know. I don't know what came over me. I simply felt a little unwell. Too much excitement. All that rich food, I suppose, and the heat. But it was unforgivable. I shall make amends tomorrow, I promise.
They love you, Arthur, like their own father. And I love you too. But we worry sometimes. You work too hard. You must try to rest. This is a holiday.
I know. And I shall, Esme, believe me.
Promise?
I promise.
Good. I'm going up now. Will you come?
Shortly. 5 more minutes, no more.
Good night, my darling. Now, don't be too long.
Good night, Esme. I recall that the way to banish an old ghost that continues its hauntings is to exorcise it. Well then, mine shall be exorcised. I shall tell my tale, write my own ghost story. And then perhaps I shall at last be free to enjoy whatever life remains for me. Years have passed since then, some 30-odd. And yet, on this Christmas Eve, I can recall it all, every last terrible detail, as if it were yesterday.
Morning, Tomes.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Kipps, sir. Shall I put your coat to dry, sir?
Yes, thank you, Tomes. This fog, it's so damp. I'm quite soaked.
Yes, sir. Oh, it's a regular particular out there, sir.
Indeed it is, Tomes. It's quite the dreariest month of the year, November. Lowering to the spirits. Mr. Bentley in yet?
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Bentley has been at his desk an hour or more.
Well, yes. Well, it took rather longer than usual to get here this morning.
Oh, I'm sure it did, sir.
Still clinging on to that cold, Tomes.
What cold's that, sir?
Right, well, what have we first today, then?
Oh, more conveyancing, sir. Property leases.
Oh, dear. Dull work for a dull day, eh?
Mr. Bentley asks to see you first, sir.
Straight away?
As soon as you arrived, he said, sir.
Oh, right. Well, in we go, then.
Mr. Kipps is here, sir, finally.
Ah, good. Arthur, come in. Sit ye down. Sit ye down. Thank you, Tomes.
Sir?
I'm sorry I'm late, sir. I was just telling Tomes that...
I don't think I ever told you about the extraordinary Mrs Drablow, Arthur.
No, sir.
Drablow, Mrs Alice Drablow, Vealmarsh House. Dead, don't you know?
Ah, I'm sorry.
Yes, I inherited Mrs Drablow from my father. Her family had had their business with this firm for... years.
Oh, yes?
She was a good age, 87.
And that's her will you have there, I take it, sir?
Mrs Drablow was, as they say, a rumman. Ever heard of the Nine Lives Causeway?
No, never.
Nor ever of Vealmarsh House?
No, sir.
Never visited the place at all?
No, I'm afraid not.
Oh, don't be afraid, Arthur. Living there, anyone might become rum.
Well, I've only a hazy idea of where it is.
Then, my boy, go home, pack your bags, and take the afternoon train from King's Cross, changing at Crewe, and again at Homerby. From Homerby, you take the branch line to the little market town of Crythin Gifford, and after that, it's a wait for the tide.
The tide, sir?
Well, you can only cross the causeway at low tide. That takes you on to Vealmarsh and the house.
Mrs Drablow's?
And when the tide comes in, you're cut off until it's low again. Remarkable place. Years since I was there, of course. My father took me. She didn't greatly care for visitors.
Was she a widow?
Since quite early in her marriage, yes.
Children?
Children? No. According to everything we've been told about Mrs Drablow, no, there were no children.
Did she have a great deal of money? Or land?
Well, she owned a house, of course, and a few properties in Crythin Gifford, shops with tenants, that sort of thing. There is a poor sort of farm, half under water. And there are the usual small trusts and investments.
Then it all sounds perfectly straightforward.
It does it not?
May I ask why I am to go there, sir?
Why? To represent this firm at the funeral of one of our oldest and most esteemed clients.
Oh, yes, of course.
I wondered whether to go up myself, naturally, but There is a chance Lord Baltrop will need to see me, so I really ought to be here, do you see?
Yes, of course, sir.
And then again, it is high time to put a little more onto your shoulders, Arthur. It's no more than you're capable of, isn't it?
I certainly hope not, sir. I'll be very glad to go up to Mrs Drablow's funeral, naturally.
There is a bit more to it than that, Arthur.
The will?
Yes, that too. I'll let you have the details through it on your journey. But principally, you're to go through Mrs Drablow's documents, her private papers, whatever they may be, wherever they may be, and bring them back to this office.
I see, sir.
Mrs Drablow was somewhat disorganized, shall I say? It might take you a while.
A day or two?
Oh, at least a day or two, Arthur. Of course, things may have changed. I may be quite mistaken. Perhaps you'll clear it all up in an afternoon. As I say, it's many years since I was there.
And will there be anyone there to help me?
Oh, yes, I've made arrangements. There's a local man, Jerome, dealing with it all. He'll be in touch with you.
And presumably she had friends? Neighbours?
No. No. Eelmarsh House is far from any neighbours.
And being a rumman, she'd never made any friends, I suppose.
Well, come along, Arthur. Look on the bright side. Treat the whole thing as a jaunt. At least we'll take you out of this fog for a day or two. Now then, you'll reach Crythin Gifford by late this evening. There's a small hotel you can put up at for tonight, and the funeral is tomorrow morning at 11. Yes, Holmes.
Your 10 o'clock client, sir.
Good. Show him in. Right you are, Arthur. Any problems? I know I can trust you to uphold the firm's reputation.
Yes, sir. I hope you can, sir.
Well, don't dither in the doorway, man. There's work to do. Work to do and little time in which to do it.
Yes, sir. Well, Holmes?
You'll be needing your coat then, sir. Not had much of a chance to dry off yet, I'm afraid.
I must say, Holmes, for all it's a strange part of the world I'm going to, it's a relief to be leaving this appalling fog and unhealthy atmosphere.
Oh, you'll be needing these too, sir.
What? Oh, yes, the Drablow papers. Some light reading for the journey. Hey, Holmes.
I had to return to my rooms, pack a bag for a couple of nights, and scribble a note to my fiancée, Stella, whom I hoped to marry the following year. After that, I was to catch a train to a remote corner of England of which until a few moments before I had barely heard. Nothing could have raised my spirits more than the sight of that great cavern of a railway station. I purchased newspapers at the bookstall and walked down the platform with a light step.
All aboard for crew! 12:43 for crew! All aboard now!
I found a corner seat in an empty compartment and settled down in great contentment. A couple of other passengers joined me, but after nodding briefly, were as intent on applying themselves to their papers as myself. Beyond the windows, it was quickly dark, and when the carriage blinds were down, all was as cosy and enclosed as some lamplit study, as we sped a good many uneventful miles towards the heart of England. At Crewe, I changed with ease and continued on my way. It was only when I came to change again onto the branch line at the small station of Homerby that I began to be less comfortable. The train in which I was to travel the last hour of my journey was ancient and comfortless, smelling of cold, stale smuts, the windows grimed, the floor unswept. Until the very last second, it seemed I was to be alone. But just at the blowing of the guard's whistle, another man climbed in, swinging the door shut as the train began to pull away.
It's a poor night out there. It seems I've exchanged one kind of poor weather for another. I left London in the grip of an appalling fog, and up here it seems cold enough for snow.
It's not snow.
No?
The wind will blow itself out. Take the rain off with it by morning.
I'm very glad to hear it.
But if you think you've escaped the fog by coming up here, you're mistaken. We get bad frets in this part of the world.
Frets?
Aye, frets. Sea frets, sea mists. They roll up in a minute from the sea to land across the marshes. It's the nature of the place. One minute it's as clear as a June day, the next, terrible.
Oh, I see.
Still, if you're staying at Crythin, you won't see the worst of it.
I stay there tonight at the Gifford Arms Hotel, and tomorrow morning.
Aye.
I expect to go out and see something of the marshes later.
Is that right?
Yes. Well, I suppose I should use this time profitably. Would you excuse me?
Drablow.
I'm sorry?
On your envelope there. Mrs Drablow. You don't tell me you're a relative.
Oh, no. No, I'm her solicitor, actually.
Ah, bound for funeral.
I am?
You'll be about the only one who is.
Oh? Oh, well, yes. Yes, I gather she had few friends and no immediate family. Something of a recluse. I suppose that's sometimes the way with old ladies.
Aye, I suppose it is, Mr...
Oh, Kipps. Arthur Kipps. And you are?
Samuel Daly.
Ah. How do you do, Mr. Daly? Yes, they turn inwards, grow eccentric. I dare say it comes from living alone.
And when you live alone in such a place as that, it comes a good deal easier.
Oh, come now. You're not going to start telling me strange tales of lonely houses.
No, Mr. Kipps, that I am not.
How far have we to go?
12 mile. That was the last bit of high ground for a good while. You've come to the flatlands, Mr. Kipps. It's a far-flung part of the world. We don't get that many visitors. Where did you say you were stopping?
The Gifford Arms. Do you know it?
I'll drop you off there. It's on my way.
Well, it's very kind of you, thank you.
And should you need anyone at any time, here's my card.
Well, thank you very much, but I think it's most unlikely. We have a local agent here. And anyway, I hope I shan't be here for more than a day or two.
Do you?
But, still, thanks very much. I'll keep it in my pocket anyway.
Now, I can do another egg if you'd like, sir. It's no trouble.
No, this is...
Another pot of tea, then?
No, really, no, I've had quite sufficient. I'm still full from last night's supper.
Well, if you change your mind, just shout, sir. I'll only be in kitchen.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. I'll just put a couple more knobs of coil on here. Did you sleep all right?
I think I can honestly say never better. I think the journey had tired me more than I thought.
Aye, it's a fair old jaunt from London, sir.
Seems a world away, if only for the weather. It's a beautiful morning out there by the look of it.
Aye, it's fresh. Sky's clear enough, but you'll be glad at fire when you get back. If you're planning to go out, that is, sir.
Oh, yes. I think I'll take a turn around the town. Explore a little.
Oh, it won't take you long, sir. It's a small enough place.
And none the worse for that, I'm sure.
Though, of course, today's busier than most, what with auction and market day falling together. That's what's brought you up here, is it, sir? The auction?
Auction?
Aye, public bar here at 11 o'clock. They're seeing off several farms from just south of here. I thought you'd come up for that.
No, I'm afraid at 11 o'clock this morning I have a rather more sombre engagement. I'm here to attend a funeral.
Oh, sorry to hear that, sir. A relative, is it?
No, it's a Mrs Drablow of Eel Marsh House. Perhaps you knew of her?
Aye, I knew of her.
I'm her solicitor, or rather, I represent her firm of solicitors. I never met her myself. I gather she kept rather out of the way for the most part.
Could hardly do otherwise living there.
Yes, I'm told.
I'll wish you good morning, sir, if you'll excuse me. I've work to do.
Yes, of course. How extraordinary. Yes?
Mr. Jerome's here to see you, sir.
Mr. Jerome?
Your agent here, sir. How do you do?
Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry, Mr. Jerome. How do you do?
I trust you had a comfortable night, Mr. Kipps.
Yes, very, thank you.
I thought perhaps you might wish me to accompany you to the church, sir. I presume our little town is unfamiliar to you.
That's most thoughtful of you, Mr. Jerome. I've not had time to explore yet. The landlord was telling me today is market day, so the streets are somewhat busier than usual.
Indeed, sir. If I might suggest we leave now, we should be at the church just on 11.
Oh, good gracious, is that the time already? Right, yes, I'll just fetch my coat from upstairs. You'll wait for me here, Mr. Jerome.
Oh, yes, sir. I'll wait for you here, sir.
The landlord was right, Mr. Jerome. It's as busy as London and every bit as colourful.
Market day, sir. They come from all over.
This auction. Quite an important sale, I gather.
Large acreage, sir. Half the land on the Omerby side of Crythin and for several miles east as well. 4 farms in all.
There's good farming land around here is at a premium, I imagine. The area seems to be mostly marsh and salt flat. There'll be no shortage of bidders, I suppose.
Well, most will have more sense than to pit themselves against such as him.
And who on earth is such as him, Mr. Jerome?
Daly.
Daly? Samuel Daly?
You know him, Mr. Kipps?
No, I met him. Just briefly, on the train coming here. Is he a large landowner here, then?
It's buying up half the county.
And do I gather disliked because of it? Well, I may be doing business with him myself before the year is out. I suspect it's quite possible that Mrs Drablow's estate will come up for sale in due course.
Oh, I doubt whether even Samuel Daly would go that far.
I don't think I fully understand you, Mr Jerome. I know I haven't seen the full extent of Mrs Drablow's land yet, but I gather there is a fair-sized farm a few miles out of town.
Hoggets? 50 acres, Mr Kipps, and half of it under flood for the best part of the year. Hoggets is nothing.
Well, there's also Eelmarsh House and all the land surrounding it. Would not that be suitable for farming?
No, sir.
Well, might not Mr Daly simply want to add a little more to his empire for the sake of being able to say that he had got it? You imply that he's that sort of man.
Aye. Maybe he is, sir. Maybe he is.
This is quite unsettling, Mr Jerome. We seem to be the focus of considerable attention.
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, we're quite plainly being watched every step of the way. And yet each time I try to catch anybody's eye, they turn away. It's a most unpleasant sensation. I feel like some pariah.
Not to worry, Mr Kipps. This is the church here.
Oh, thank heavens for that. I know I'm a stranger here, but really, I was beginning to feel as if I had two heads.
After you, sir.
Thank you. We seem to be the only people here, Mr Jerome. She must have been lonelier than I thought. It's very sad. I take it she's to be buried in the churchyard here?
That is so.
Is there a family grave?
No. At least not here, not in this churchyard.
Somewhere else?
It's no longer in use. The area's unsuitable.
I'm sorry?
I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality. Then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?
I see the old lady did have one friend after all.
Through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved
The woman
brethren,
stood several rows behind us, and quite alone.
always abounding in the
She
world,
must have slipped into the church after we'd taken our places. She was dressed in deepest black, in a style that was somewhat out of fashion. A bonnet covered her head and shaded her face. But I could still see enough to recognize that she was suffering from some terrible wasting disease. She was extremely pale, and her skin was tautly stretched across her bones, so that it gleamed with a curious blue-white sheen. Her eyes seemed sunken back into her head, as though she had been a victim of starvation. She was quite possibly no more than 30, and it seemed to me unspeakably poignant that a woman, perhaps only a short time away from her own death, should drag herself to the funeral of another.
He cometh up and is cut down like a flower. He fleeth as it were a shadow, and never continueth in one stay.
We should follow the coffin, Mr. Gibbs. Miss Gibbs?
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
Who for our sins art justly displeased, forasmuch as it hath pleased Almighty God of his great mercy to take unto himself the soul of our dear sister here departed, we therefore commit her body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Amen.
Amen.
My deepest condolences, Mr. Jerome, young man.
Thank you. A simple service, but no less moving.
Are you perhaps a relative of the deceased?
Mr. Kipps represents Mrs. Drablow's legal advisers, nothing more.
Ah, I see. Well, a duty done, Mr. Jerome, a duty done.
Indeed. Good day to you, sir.
Yes, good day. Well, a melancholy little service, Mr. Jerome.
Indeed, sir. You'll be returning to your hotel, no doubt, sir.
Yes, although I would like a word with the young woman first. Perhaps I can be of some assistance to her.
I beg pardon, sir.
Well, I hope she can find her own way home. She looks so dreadfully unwell. Who is she? The young woman with the wasted face, at the back of the church and then in the graveyard.
A young woman?
Yes, dressed in black. Well, there she is now, over by that tree. Is there anything the matter, Mr. Jerome? You look unwell. Oh, Mr. Jerome, are you all right? Look, if you can just walk a few steps back to the porch, you can rest and recover while I go for help. A car.
No!
But, my dear fellow...
No! I do apologise. I'm so sorry. It's nothing, a passing faintness. I think it would be best if you would just walk back with me towards my offices in Penn Street, just off the square.
Well, if you're sure...
Quite sure.
But, Mr. Jerome, please wait, are you sure?
But Mr. Jerome was hurrying away, almost running in his eagerness to get out of the churchyard. It was an extraordinary scene. Only seconds earlier, he had been on the verge of a complete collapse, triggered apparently by my reference to the young Lady Moona, and yet now he moved like a man possessed, out of the churchyard, past a row of small children, lined up against the iron railings, staring in at the mournful proceedings. Their pale, solemn faces with great, round eyes, their little hands gripping the railings tightly, each one of them silent and quite motionless. It was a strangely grave and touching sight. As I followed Mr. Jerome, I caught the eye of one and smiled at him gently. But he looked at me blankly, his expression almost disturbingly unchildlike. Had I been less concerned with catching up with Mr. Jerome and making sure he was all right, then I might have felt rather more clearly the distinct chill that was settling over the graveyard, despite the bright autumn sunshine that made the distant marshes shimmer and gleam on the far horizon.